Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Bonsoir, mes amis. I almost started on mute, but we're not going to do that today anyway. Your Montreal Canadiens are now 3-1-0 in the 25-26 NHL season, and I got to tell you folks, this is better than I expected. I don't think that they played a necessarily amazing game tonight by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think they were the better team. I think they've been the better team all four games, essentially. But what has stuck out to me more than anything is that this is a different team from what we're used to watching. The last couple of years, the Canadiens have been a team where when the top line's out there and they need to make something happen, you can kind of see like some special things starting to build. And now it seems like we're much further along in that process because it's not just trailing with 5 minutes in the third period where you see those special moments. And they still find a way to bring those moments out in those final 5 minutes for sure, as they did tonight with Demidov. I got to make an effort to make better pronunciations of names. But the point is, now when the Canadiens have shifts where they're on their toes, they're not just having good shifts here and there. They're overwhelming teams. And it's not just the top line. It's like outside of the fourth line, the top three lines are all having shifts where it seems like the opponents can't keep up with them. And I think part of that has to do with the depth on defense, but the depth everywhere is making a difference. All right, let's check in on the chat here before we get the show started for real. I see Trinka is here. Alexandre Christian, Keck Shows, says that I chose the perfect thumbnail. Yes, I put Demidov on there. I thought we hadn't done a Demidov thumbnail for the show yet, and I just felt something maybe with the first game of the year on home ice that might be a thing. I thought about Zach Bolduc, which, gotta say, major disappointment, man. No goal tonight. Worst performance by Zach Bolduc in a Montreal Canadiens uniform. No, I'm just kidding. We can't start like that. I loved seeing him absorb the ovation during the opening ceremony tonight for the Canadiens. The entire thing was spectacular. This is a team that always gets pomp and ceremony right, sometimes overly long. I don't think today was overly long. The spotlight on the net with Ken Dryden's mask on it was utter perfection, and it just set the tone for the game. It set the tone for the game, and I hope for the season. I'll check in on the chat here again. Denny is here, King of the North. Who else is here? David W, MFM, welcome. Stephen LaRusick, Piano Matt. Bernardo is here. Bernardo Sunier. Natalie Petty, welcome. I'm glad to see so many familiar faces. All right, before we get the show started proper, we got to tell you about one of our partners, Inchu Bijou, who does so much for us, and we try to do so much for them because they rule. All right, so Inchu Bijou is a little company in Montreal that makes jewelry, and I can't tell you enough good things about them because they are spectacular, not only in the products that they make, but also in the people that they are. So let's start out from there, and I'll tell you about Inchu Bijou. At the famous chateau at 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise lies one of Montreal's coolest secrets, a glamorous Gothic jewelry store owned and run by women. Inchu Bijou isn't just a business. They've built a community that supports bold creativity and expression. When I was first introduced to founder Astrid Episegomian's shop, I was floored by the detail, vision, and scale of what she's built from her own mind. I don't think anyone would call me goth, but I know an innovator when I see one. Along with building their own business, Inchu Bijou also hosts markets for vendors in their space called Marché Maleficarum, boosting their whole community. If you don't live in Montreal, explore inchubijou.com, where you'll find over 800 designs that range from affordable to bespoke. Check out Inchu Bijou right now, a Game Over partner from the beginning. All right, smash the like button on this video because it really does help us out, and hit subscribe as well if you're watching and you're not subscribed, because why wouldn't you be subscribed? This is the best place to get your Habs analysis post-game, and we're going to be bringing a lot more to the table as the season goes on because we got plans, my friend. We got big plans. All right, let's get into it properly here. Let's talk about the vibes of that game because it was a bit of a weird one, right? Like it felt like the Canadiens were in control for most of it, and the Kraken just managed to play a similar kind of game to the Leafs in game one, where they, bumbled their way through and created some excellent opportunities out of bad bounces. And you got to give them credit for finishing those chances. But I don't think that they created that much offense. I think they just threw a bunch of point shots at the net and, eventually got some bounces that went their way from a bit of a scrambly defense. And I saw some anger about Sam Montembeault tonight. I'm going to save that conversation about goaltending until the third period. But we will talk about Sam Montembeault. We will talk about Jakub Dobeš. We will talk about maybe Jacob Fowler. Who knows? We'll see how deep we go. But before we do, I just wanted to hit on a couple of things tonight that stood out to me more than ever, or more than anything. I think Lane Hutson looked spectacular. He clearly wanted to accomplish something tonight. Also, it was a weird night for Mike Matheson, I thought, where for the most part, he's looked like he has the first three games, but he had a stretch in the third period where he made like bad Mike Matheson night mistakes, like 3 or 4 times in a couple of shifts. And he managed to figure it out from there. But him and Dobson continue to be unbelievable for this club. I'm not trying to say anything bad about David Savard, because why would you? He's awesome. And, he's good at what he's good at. He was at the end of his career with the Canadiens, and he stuck on way longer than I think any of us expected him to do. And he also was like a pretty decent contributor in his own special way throughout his time here. But going from David Savard to Noah Dobson is such a extreme change in the way that this team plays in general, that the reverberations throughout the lineup are unbelievable. Like it's so big, and Dobson has just been completely full value, beyond my expectations. Personally, I think he's more physical than I expected, and I was told all summer long from Islanders fans that he was a defensive disaster. Maybe that will happen at some point. Maybe Dobson will show his warts at some point during the season. It's a long season, but right now, he is absolutely clinical. Him and Matheson tilt the ice together, and they're able to support each other in a way that, for the most part, even when they do make mistakes, there's not really that much risk coming back. And to have Lane Hutson behind those two guys as the next option coming off the bench, it's an embarrassment of riches for the Montreal Canadiens at the moment that it's just tough to deal with. It's tough to deal with. Romelli says, don't start me on those refs tonight. Icing is fucking simple, and they fucked it up at least 5 times straight. Sorry for the F-bombs. I'm just reading the chat. No, I don't usually do that. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, the icing thing was weird, especially considering there were 3 missed or bad icing calls in a row in that third period. I don't remember who the first one was with the Canadiens. I think it might have been Slavkovsky who was chasing down, and I thought he was 100% the first to the dot, but he was going to get angled out as the puck went behind the net. So they call that one on the side of the Kraken. Fine, that's the standard you set. But then later in the game, when the exact same thing happened with Hutson, and I don't remember which Kraken player it was, where yes, the Kraken player got to the dot first, but Hutson had angled him out and won the race to the puck. They didn't call that icing. And then the other icing call that resulted in the goal against, the Demidov one, that's inexcusable. That's the kind of misplay that should not happen even in preseason. I think that's pretty embarrassing. Although at the same time, this game was, I would say, below average officiating in general, but not atrocious by any means. The Canadiens probably don't want to complain about officiating after the Chicago game. They probably want a few more calls to go their way in terms of power play opportunities, but even then, it took until the power play was over for them to find a way to tie this game. So you can't be too upset, but I think it's worthwhile to talk about these things consistently, because it's a day-to-day issue in this league. It's not about one team or the other. It's that refs are given poor directives from the NHL. refs and linesmen are overtaxed by the amount of responsibilities they have in a game this fast, and the NHL just doesn't give them the structural support to call things properly. So you get so many missed calls and people get really upset. And especially if you're a fan of a team and your team gets the bad end of the stick a few times in a row, you start developing that whole conspiracy theory situation. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. The game is worse to have that aspect to it. I think the NHL believes that consternation and frustration in the fan base like leads to more like rage consumption of their content in general, but I think genuinely it keeps people out of enjoying the sport. And like I said on a show recently, I don't remember if it was with Kay or if it was on my own after game 3, but I truly don't believe that the NHL trusts the game of hockey to sell itself. I think they believe that they need their thumb on the scale to manufacture emotional reactions in order for the game to be popular. And I think that's just so totally wrong in managing a sports league, and part of the reason why the NHL has fallen so far behind the other major leagues in North America. Remember, before Bettman took over, the NHL and the NBA were actually not too far apart in terms of revenue, and that was during the Michael Jordan era. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. All right, let's get off the refs. Denny says the refs call every team equally poorly except the Habs. They call them the worst. Absolutely, my friend. That is the way it is. Andrew Gisbert says, turns out making hockey players who couldn't cut it your officials, they can't keep up with the ones that made the show. I mean, listen, refs it's a tough job. They don't get to sit on the bench for shifts, right? Like they're going the whole game. Their travel schedule is atrocious. It is a legitimately physically demanding job where guys are playing through injuries and illness, and they're reffing more games than the players play, right? Like they're covering more kilometers on the ice than the players do. So it's tough, but I really do think as much as there are bad refs, the bigger issue is the overall lack of structural support and good directives from the league. All right, let's get off the refs because it's too easy to get stuck on ref talk. I want to talk about these Montreal Canadiens because I think they're really special. So I want to hear from you all. What was the more hype moment for you? And I think I know the answer. The Cole Caufield game winner, which was unbelievably slick and, in the net before Joey Decord even knew that Caufield had shot the puck. It was beautiful. That little, like the multiple reverses from Lane Hutson off of the faceoff win. Who is this kid? I don't know how he turns so fast. It's like he can shoot a pick straight into the ice and just turn on a dot. I don't know if there's anybody in the NHL with the agility that Lane Hutson has. No, in fact, no, there isn't. There's zero chance there's anybody else who has this level of agility. I've never seen a guy be able to do this. The closest comparison in terms of skating and puck handling ability is probably Patrick Kane, but I don't think Kane was as quick as Lane Hutson. So I don't know. It's just an unprecedented guy. But yeah, the Caufield goal or Patrick Laine not shooting and passing to Demidov in the middle of the ice and watching that kid have the patience of, I don't know, some kind of saint and dipsy doodle around, waiting for the Kraken to make a mistake, waiting for Joey Decord to run out of space to make a save, and just flipping that puck in the net like nothing in the world could stop him. We're picking Demidov, right? Yeah, Outrage has Demidov tying the game. I scared the heck out of my cat. How did Hutson fall to 62nd in the draft, says Piano Matt. I agree. Makes no sense. Keck shows Demidov was the highlight of this game. I agree. Bernardo Sonia says, did you see SDPN shitting their pants on Hudson's contract after trying to make it seem like there was drama? Okay, we're going to talk Hutson and Hughes in the second period, but I love the energy. Let's bring it. The Demidov Kay says it's got to be Demidov and Patty. Something about his calmness and taking his time in a high-pressure situation, plus his huge smile and Patty getting rewarded for what I maintain is good play. Yes, I think Laine specifically needed to have an impact in this game. You could see it even in the first period that he was getting puck touches. He was getting to shooting areas. He was getting the puck and getting his shot off in the shooting areas, but the shots were not shooting. They were just, he kept on whiffing on the puck, or it would just go straight into a skate, or he had one really good shot that Joey Decord made a big save on, or he was very square to it. He read it very well. But you could tell that Laine was getting close, but things weren't quite working out for him tonight. And I think that presence of mind for a shooter's gotta shoot player to look in the middle of the ice and say, yeah, I'm going to give the 19-year-old the puck in this situation where we need to score to tie this game. We deserve to win this game. We can't let it slip away, even though it's early in the season. I love that from Patrik Laine, because I think a lot of folks who don't like Patrik Laine would have expected him to just whip that puck into a shin pad, because I don't think he had a shooting lane. And he didn't. And I think that you have to give credit when credit's due. And he had some tough moments tonight too. There was a great pass breakup in the defensive zone from Laine, and then he somehow, like, in deflecting the pass, put it straight into the slot. And luckily another Canadiens player was there to cover. I think it was Gooley. But yeah, only Laine makes a good play and it ends up in like prime scoring chance area against anyway. It's just, he's touched by the hockey gods in a positive and negative way in both zones. You know, it's very interesting how he is as a player. He's very unique in that way. But yeah, I love him finding Demidov there, and the way that Demidov just held onto that puck under all that pressure and just no problem, no hesitation, no like panic in his game. And yes, I see someone brought up, Keksho says, and for Demi, don't forget his break in and pass to Newhook on Newhook's. Yeah, that pass was beautiful. The stop up and freezing of the Kraken defender, like, completely lost him, and then finds Newhook for an easy tap in on the other side. Also, credit on that play. I haven't seen very many people mention it, but if you go back and watch the Newhook goal, watch Alexandre Carrier, who had a friggin' great game tonight, in my opinion. I thought he was visible everywhere, and I was shocked when I saw his ice time was only something like 14 minutes. And I get it, because the Canadiens have a lot of talent on those first two defensive pairings, but I think Carrier deserves a little bit more ice time. I think his ability to, number one, take hits to make plays, but also jump into the plays offensively. And he's not a big point producer, but he keeps plays going. But him driving the net on that play took the entire Kraken defense off guard and allowed Newhook to be completely uncovered and for Demidov to find him on there. So I want to give credit to Alexandre Carrier as well. So Romelli says Carrier going to the net on that goal and then bringing the opposite depth with him to free up Newhook. Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of stuff that Carrier does very, very well. And he may not necessarily get points on plays, but he seems to always be involved in a positive way. And I think he and the Xhekaj pairing took the blunt end of the stick there a little bit tonight on the goals against. But as much as you have to look at each goal and look at where the breakdowns were, I really feel like a lot of the Kraken's actual goals tonight were bad luck bounces. And you can lay blame if you'd like, but I think it's a little bit early in the season to get too invested in bad bounces. So if bad bounces keep going against guys over and over and over again, like I remember there was a year where Josh Georges had like tipped or straight up knocked pucks into the Canadiens' net, specifically on Carey Price, something like 15 times in an 82 game season. Like, that's something to maybe investigate. Maybe your positioning is bad, right? But 3 games in, a few goals against on bad luck bounces. Like, I saw some folks getting upset at Arber Xhekaj on the Jared McCann goal that gave the Seattle Kraken a 4-3 lead. I don't know what you expect Arber to really do there. Like, maybe he could have reacted better, but it would have been by luck, because he could never predict where that puck was going. It was a weird bounce that went perfectly for Jared McCann. And, the same goes for Sam Montembeault, honestly. It was a very abrupt change of direction along with a screen. Trinket says, maybe he just stares into the opposing team's eyes. Sorry, what is this? I lost this. Oh, this is talking about Alex Carrier. Yeah, he does have very beautiful eyes. He's a very good defenseman. I'm getting distracted here, but I thought, I agree with you, Romelli. Xhekaj had a tough game overall. Really not his fault, but he seems to have a tough time catching pass and shaky positioning too. Yes, I was going to talk about that in relation to Georgia's. So I think that Xhekaj specifically has a problem when the puck starts like bouncing around a bit, where his puck tracking is not as elite as most of like the better defensive style defensemen in the game, I'd say. And because he's big, he has a lot of momentum where he has to be like to turn quickly. Like he's not going to be able to turn like Lane Hutson ever. He's not like Hal Gill either. He's not a boat, but his reaction side to side when he has to change directions quickly and like make a lot of adjustments, I think he gets lost and can sometimes like be looking one way, but his body is still going the other way. And that's where the separation happens. And that's just something that either will always be a part of his game a little bit, and he'll have to work to make it a little bit less of a detriment, or he'll have to adjust in some way so that he's not caught that often, or maybe he needs to be protected a little bit more, which is difficult to do in the NHL in the third pairing, but you can do it from teams or lines that specifically play that like more chaotic east-west style. North-south, I don't think he's a problem. Like he's not a slow player. He's not bad at like getting the puck off of players. He's not bad in terms of like overall positioning, I find. It's just when he has to read and react too much, it's like his brain is going, but the body is like just a hair behind. And it's a third pairing guy. That's honestly, considering Xhekaj's immense amount of strengths that he brings, it doesn't bother me that much. I hope he continues to work on it, and I do think he will, but I think his strengths still outweigh his weaknesses, but somebody has to get scored on when you're playing, right? And the third pairing is not going to be as good as the top two pairings on this team just because it doesn't have Hutson or Dobson on it. Game Over Montreal from Kay says, I would definitely like to see Struble get a chance too, not as a consequence to Arbor, but keeping Strubes warm. Yeah, it's a tough balance, right? Because I think they're trying to send the message to Xhekaj right now, just based on his own, quotes in media, that they believe in him and they believe in the player that he's going to be even more. So they're trying to give him some runway here. And Marty is pretty patient, but Jaden Struble's a good player too. And you can't just let him sit and rot on the sidelines. That's not fair. And, he has dealt with a fair amount of that early in his career already. So there does have to be, some time to get him in a game. But I'd like to see a little bit of, I think I'd like to see specifically Carrier with Hutson a little bit. I think those two, like maybe you might think it's undersized, but I don't think Carrier shies away from any of the rough stuff or really gets physically manhandled that often, despite the fact that he's 5'11". And I think those two could work pretty darn well together. And Gouli is getting better game to game, I find, like game by game, but I still don't think he's at the level that I expect. And there were a few moments tonight where he was the weak link when like the Hutson was out with like a top line or the dock line, and they were trying to get something done, and it was Gouli who was ending it. All right, Outrage says, I think if we're critiquing our bottom pair D-man, we're in a good spot overall for defense. Yes, my gosh. Especially when it's critiquing in a way that's like, it's not like, get this guy out of the lineup. It's like, he could do better. We expect more. That's the way to do it. Everyone boo this man. Everyone boo him. Oh, because I said Caden Gouli. Sorry, Kay. Sorry. He's playing better, but I think some of the decisions that he's made haven't worked out very well. There was a play specifically tonight that bothered me where he was kind of the last man back, and it was set up for him to go into the middle, and Hutson was streaking forward, and he decided that he like didn't have space to make the pass and tried to go up the wall, and he just gave it away completely, and it was almost a 2-on-0. Hutson had to come back and deflect the shot out into the netting. So Hutson really saved his butt there, and he will do that because he's Lane Hutson. But I expect Caden Gooley to not have to get his butt saved as often as he has. Trinka says, we are so far off from the 2021-2022 season. We've made it through. We are the Paul Rudd look at us gif. That is, like, we really do need to take stock of how quick it's all been, and I think that's a great way to like shift into the next segment, which we will in a moment. But this team very recently was objectively terrible. They had some good pieces and not much else, and a lot of bad contracts. And Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton came in here with Marty St. Louis, and they've fixed a whole lot of problems. Not just roster problems, but organizational, infrastructural problems. Building an analytics department, hiring skills coaches, actually looking at developing your prospects. It is wild. All right, so let's talk about that along with the Lane Hutson contract extension and Kent Hughes contract extension. So much has happened in a couple of days. It's wild. It's wild. We'll talk about that shortly, but first I got to tell you about St. Motel, another partner with us. And by the way, if you want to visit either of these locations, coming up, I believe it's actually this weekend, is Inchu Bijou's Marché Maleficarum for the Halloween season, which the theme I believe is vampires versus witches. So I always go there. I always make it there on the Maleficarum weekends. Not just to check out all the different vendors that are set up throughout the Chateau Saint-Amboise, but also because my kids get to go in there and see cool stuff, and they get to play in the ball pit. So, if you're going, send me a message on Blue Sky or whatever, and if I'll tell you, around the time that I'm going to go there, come hang out, say hi, meet some cool people, because I got these people who run these businesses absolutely rule. The most welcoming, amazing community. I love them, so check them out. While you're browsing Inchu Bijou's goth shop, head next door and discover Montreal's most unique selfie studio. Whether you're looking to take some banger pics of your Halloween costume or cosplay, or you want to make some memories with friends, the St. Motel has you covered. Experience their bombastic decors that are always changing, hop in the ball pit, and take advantage of their extensive and flexible on-site lighting. Head to lesaintmotel.com to book your time in the studio, book private time where you and your friends will be the only ones allowed in, or book the space for an event. The dedicated, caring staff will make sure that you have a good time. I do have one warning for you before you book. If you have kids, they won't want to leave. Whether you're at Le Saint Motel or Inchu Bijou, tell them Game Over sent you. All right, welcome back to the second period of Game Over Montreal. Hit the like button on this stream if you're with us or you're watching on replay, because it really does help us grow. And unfortunately, we are slaves to algorithms now in the new world of media. You can't just make things and share it so people will see it, because even if they follow you, they might not see it if the algorithm chooses to not let them see it. And the algorithm doesn't really like anti-fascist, left-wing style stuff and welcoming communities and not being a bigot, unfortunately. So if you like, people and having cool people in your life and not judging them for who they are, help us out. Send us a like. Let's talk about Lane Hutson. And I don't recall if I talked about this on the show last time, but I know I talked about it on Blue Sky. But last game on the broadcast on Sportsnet, multiple insiders talked about how the Lane Hutson situation in Montreal was not going well. There was friction building. And I believe at least one reporter in Montreal said that this deal was not going to get done in season. 24 hours later, actually less, Lane Hutson signs for 8 years in Montreal for less than Luke Hughes signed for in New Jersey. I mean, I would also take less money to live in Montreal than New Jersey, especially given the political climate in the United States. But we all know Lane Hutson is like twice the player Luke Hughes is, right? Like, that was wild. Wild. And I had talked to a couple good sources earlier in the week about the Lane Hutson situation. And what I heard was that the reporting on it was specious at best. That both team and agents were not happy with the reporting because it didn't reflect the reality of the negotiations. Suddenly, that seems to clearly be the case. Lane Hutson is here in Montreal for the next 8 years at an absolute bargain. An absolute bargain. He took less to make the team better, just like Suzuki did, just like Caufield did, just like Gooley did, just like Slavkovsky did. They have built a culture of, yes, they're getting paid. They're getting paid good money. They're all getting paid less than what they're worth because they want to be like that top line in Montreal, better than the sum of their parts. And this Montreal Canadiens team, it would not be like this without Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, even if it was the same players. Because in any organization, shit rolls downhill. If there's rotten at the top, there'll be rotten below. And if there's great leadership at the top that value the right things, that treat people well, you will get that throughout the organization. And I think we've seen that very, very quickly, far faster than I would have predicted the results from the top down in the organization. It is jarring to watch a management team this clearly competent build so quickly around what could have been very little. Like, realistically, Cole Caufield, while an incredible goal scorer, could have been the same kind of player as Patrik Laine if he was developed poorly, if he was handled poorly. When he broke into the NHL, his defensive numbers, horrifying. Looked like he barely cared. He was always cheating for offense, right? It's not like he had no skill defensively, but his priorities were elsewhere. Now, dude is a menace defensively. He's not the greatest checker in the world or anything. He's still like 5'6", but he's always on the back check. Oftentimes the first guy. The amount of mistakes he makes in the defensive zone, way, way fewer. Like, not even close. He's not a liability against the top lines in the NHL. Like, to have that out of a 40-plus goal scorer, which I know he hasn't actually, been a consistent 40-plus goal scorer because of injuries and all, blah, blah. But that's what he is as a player type. It's ridiculous. It's wild. What this team has put together in such a very short time should have every fan hyped, regardless of whether you're arguing about Arbor Jackeye or Jaden Struble, or, whether Patrik Laine needs more power play time or needs to be scratched. Like, all of the problems have suddenly turned into very small luxury problems. Like, if Patrik Laine doesn't figure it out this year, okay, he's not a cornerstone piece of the team. He's a bonus, really. Like, he is there to fill a very specific niche, and he has, defensive warts 100%, but it'll be fine if he doesn't figure it out. He's not a high leverage part of the team. Like, there's no big loss, right? It's just a bonus if he does have like another 20 goal season or more. The power play ability, like the one-shot goal scoring ability, the games that could be pulled from loss to win because of one great play by Patrik Laine tonight. to Ivan Demidov. That's the bonus. Okay, says everyone be sure to like the stream if you haven't already, and please subscribe. Yes, please do. Jean-Francois Paré says they're being paid by the power of friendship. It's fun to watch this group of friends enjoy playing together and being great at it. It is like, that is so much of what it is. You absolutely nailed it, Jean-Francois. Sorry. There is a joy to this group that I've not really seen with the Montreal Canadiens. And it's not just like a couple of players that celebrate together, you know, like the Carey Price and PK Subban triple low five. That was great. I love that. I'm not going to ever crap on that. But this team, seemingly from top to bottom, is almost universal with each other. There's a level of like friendship love that these guys have developed that the last time I can think of it, it all comes from teams that grow together in similar age ranges. Like teams that either luck out or build in a way where they have a lot of players who play together in the American Hockey League that are going to make the big club. And there's a lot of like layover between that NHL, AHL group and another young group that's like in the NHL already that grows together. So you kind of have like waves of development. And that's what the Canadiens have exactly here, is they have a bunch of players who were just about to make the NHL or just making the NHL from the Bergevin regime. You know, your Caufields, your Suzukis, your Goolies. And then you've got the new blood injected by the Hughes-Gorton regime that's not even finished yet. Like David Reinbacher is not on this team. You know, there's still guys like Florian Jacquet in the American Hockey League that could completely change the identity of the fourth line. Like, there's so much good that has been done in such a short time that you got to pinch yourself a little bit as a Habs fan, because this is just the beginning. Like, this is just the first season where they're good. That's crazy. This is Demidov's first season. First full NHL season. It's only going to get crazier. Oh my God, outrage. Exactly. Hage isn't even here. Like, this is the team that looks this good already, where Kirby Dach is still a maybe. It's seriously impressive. It's seriously impressive. Greek word for brotherly love or friendship love. The Patrocles, Matheson for $3 million. Yeah, absolute steal. You know, like, and I think I said it on the last show. Matheson is in a contract year. I hope he makes absolutely major bank. He's at the time of his career where it's going to be his last big contract, and I hope he has the best season of his career, selfishly and for himself. You know, for the Habs and for himself. I think he really deserves it. He's been a great leader on this team, and frankly has taken on a role that he wasn't built for and done it without a complaint, you know, taking the slings and arrows of criticism from everyone, including yours truly, when he messes up. He's been an absolute warrior for this team and has been beyond what I thought he was capable of this season. Very, very strong with Noah Dobson. Semi Hague says, I can't believe we're here instead of worrying if Jordan Harris was going to sign with the Habs. Yeah, I know. And the crazy thing is, I legitimately still like Jordan Harris. I hope he has a successful career. I like that player. But yeah, you look back at it and you think things have just changed in a really significant way. The level of talent that the Canadiens are shoving out there at every position, it's crazy. So yeah, Kent Hughes, another 5 years. I don't think any of us should care how much money he makes. He should probably be the highest paid GM in the league at this rate. But like, how can you be upsetty spaghetti when you're watching this team right now? It's too good. They're really going to pop when Dahlin and Thompson request a trade to the Habs because of vibes. Yeah, I mean, this is something I think Habs fans should prepare themselves for as well, on the positive side, that has not really been a thing in my lifetime that free agency and trade requests are going to be a thing that for once benefit the Montreal Canadiens. Not just because they're going to be a good team and you can see what kind of potential they have with the players they have growing together right now, and players around the league are going to pay attention to that and want to take part in it. But also it's the culture, right? Like, players talk. And beyond just the culture, you've got Marty St. Louis. You know, I think there are going to be players around the league who look, and if they manage to continue this trajectory and Marty doesn't have like a slip up that ends up causing him to be canned, because, you know, coaches are always the first to go. But if he is like the established long-term coach of the franchise, which I think he has grown exceptionally as a coach, he has things to work on still. He's very inexperienced compared to when most coaches make the NHL, like how much time you put in, but he's really leveled up. I think there's going to be players around the league who want to play for Marty St. Louis. I think that he's that level of player coach, and I think that you can look at the development among veteran players on this team, and they're going to see what the Canadiens are doing and understand that if they come here, they will probably get better. That's a very alluring thing. Very alluring for players as obsessive as professional athletes. Because when you get to this level, like the lowest guy in the league is like still in the top 0.5% of hockey players worldwide. Like, to get an edge over somebody is such, like, the skill gap is so small, even though it's huge in the actual league. But to us, the skill gap between them is like so tiny that to get an edge is everything, which is why players often buy into nonsense like cupping and chiropractors, because anything that can get them a little bit healthier, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster is worth it when the edge is so small to get so much better. So I think we're going to see that in Montreal. Doc had a good game. Doc is clearly trending towards definite, and only a tiny handful of games, guys. I believe in Doc. I wrote about it for Eyes on the Prize before the season began. I think that he has still the potential to be a like David Krejci type player for the Canadiens. You know, a probably under 20 goal scorer per year, but a guy who racks up assists. And what I said was, if he's able to capture the like the board dominance that he had before the knee injuries in Montreal, that first season here, where he was just a warrior on the boards, like regularly go in, beat two guys, come out with the puck and put it to the middle, like Slavkovsky does now. That's what Doc looked like in his first stint with the Canadiens. If he can get back to that, he can make an entire NHL career getting the puck off the wall and passing it to Ivan Demidov. I think you probably get 60 assists a year doing that. I'm not even kidding. That's how good I think that kid's going to be. Players like the coward Mark Scheifele get their DNA tested to see what they should eat diet-wise, and the workouts best serve them. Yeah, Trinka. I mean, yeah, they go crazy. Like, look at Nate McKinnon. His routines are nuts. The amount of attention he pays to what he eats, all that kind of stuff, the amount of exercise. Like, I bet you if we saw how many calories Mike Matheson burns a day, we would have our jaws dropped. Like, this is a guy who will hit the gym after a game. All right, let's talk about goaltending, because I think it's interesting, and, you know, Sam Montembeault deserves to be talked about. It's not just about negative stuff. I think it's worth talking about the goalies for once, now that the team is getting good. But before we get too deep into Sam Montembeault, I do want to tell y'all that one of the things that you can do to support us, if you really want to support this organization, is click on the description of this video, or if you're listening on the podcast, or you can go on to our YouTube channel. There's a link for our Patreon. If you can support us, we would greatly appreciate it. There's also a free tier, and the free tier will get you access to things in our Discord, which is always fun. You can join that. There's a link also in our bio and in this video/podcast. You can find them there. And yeah, it's very important that we start making some money to pay all the people that we have here, because that's capitalism, baby. So if you can help us out, head to our Discord, drop us a couple bucks. All right, so Outrage says, Monty is fine, but I'd like to see more Dobie this season. I think that is entirely fair. I think Sam Montembeault's probably not going to get 60 games this year. I think his performance over the last several years would earn that many games. Like I don't want to say he's entitled to, but I think that it would be entirely reasonable for him to expect to play that many games. But I think he's best served playing about 50. And I think the Canadiens are best served come playoff time if he plays about 50. And Jakub Dobeš is good enough to play that many games. I think it'll keep Sam Montembeault healthier, and it'll allow Jakub Dobeš to improve and grow his game as well. And that's something worth doing. Not only because eventually Jacob Fowler is probably going to come in here and provide competition for these two guys, but also because Jakub Dobeš is a young player who deserves his own development path and has been pretty darn good at the NHL level. Not amazing, but pretty darn good. And I think it's fair to want to see what we can get out of him. But on that note, I thought Montembeault took way too much heat tonight. I'd have to look over at each goal again individually, but at least 3 were really bouncy goals. Whether it was the one that went off McCann's leg and then he just flipped and turned with it and nobody could see what was happening until it was too late, both Xhekaj and Montembeault. And I thought Montembeault actually got over pretty quick once he realized what was happening. It just wasn't quick enough. And if he did stop it, it probably would have been more luck and being in bad position originally on the first shot instead of in position for the follow-up shot. So that one I don't blame on him. And there was the other one from, I think it was the Nyman goal that kind of got shot through a bunch of legs and bounced in. There was too many pinball goals tonight to blame the goalie. If it's a consistent problem where the goalie's not puck tracking, then yeah, you got to look at it. But I don't think Montembeault has really been bad this year. I think that he's been pretty darn good. But tonight was a weird one. They didn't really test him that much, I thought, but he made a couple big saves. And yeah, you want to save on the fourth goal. Ramelli says, and the third was just, oh my God, another goal from faraway wrister. Yeah. The third one was a tough one. Should have had the fourth goal. That's the only thing I'd say. I mean, I don't know if it's fair to expect him to have that goal. I think that's just, you chalk that one up to, they got an incredibly fortunate bounce. Right guy, right position. It happened to be Jared McCann who gets that puck. It's tough. Which game does Dobeš get this week? I'd like to see him Thursday, and then Sam can get the Hockey Night in Canada start, but I don't know. Marty's hard to predict with goalies. I thought that he would have gone to the backup more last year, but he really rode Montembeault hard. I hope that they know they don't need to ride Montembeault to chase a playoff spot this year. I hope they're approaching it confidently, because with the start that they've had, they're not on the back foot already. They're already in a good position and they look like they're going to continue building on that. So there's no reason to ride one guy into the ground. Ramelli, at least I have McCann in my pool. Yeah, it's always a little bonus, but then you have to cheer against the Habs and that always sucks. Yeah, I don't know. I think a 32 and 50 split, if they're both healthy, would be really perfect for both of them. But if Dobeš earns more games, then I think you also have to look at that as well. It's a meritocracy at the end of the day. I just trust Montembeault. Honestly, I think he's given us a long enough sample size under extreme duress for a very poor defensive team to show that he's pretty darn good at this level. He's been there, done that at this stage. And I think that over the long haul, we're not going to be upset with him. Trinka says, Marty doesn't really understand goalies. I know they have goalie coaches and stuff, but I'd love to have someone on the bench who gets goalies. Yeah, I think you can tell that he gets forwards better than he gets defensemen too. Like, they do seem slower to adjust on the defensive side than they do on the offensive side. And I think their like initial instincts are also better in like building lines than they are in building defense pairings. But yeah, I don't know how many coaches get goalies. That's one that, like, even if you ask coaches, I bet you not many of them would say that they get goalies. Goalies are weird. Romelli says Caden Primo won with a .867 save percentage tonight in Toronto. Good for him. That's the kind of Habs win he would have too. So, are the Leafs terrible? I know this is not a topic that we need to get into right now, but you know what? Let's shift over to the Q&A. Let's go to overtime, and then we can start talking about other stuff. You can ask off-topic questions. You can fill up the chat, and then we can make fun of the Leafs. All right, we are in overtime, and before we look at the chat and check some questions, I'm going to ask you all to please go to thegameovernetwork.com and check out our merch. You can check out our Montreal merch from the Game Over Montreal page if you want, or you can just go through the merch page, and we've got some cool stuff. We've got our like more modern streetwear design shirts. We've got our more throwback, almost like Zellers style Montreal shirts to check out. We've got hoodies, we've got hats, and I was thinking tonight watching Patrick Laine come in that get up with the hat, and he had the 2 cards in it with the 2 and the 9. That was pretty slick. I was wondering, would you guys want like a hat that had like the cards stitched, and we could make the different players on the Canadiens with different cards and have like the Game Over logo on the front, or we could even do the cards on the front. But I think that's a cool idea. I think it would be pretty sick, actually. So I wanted to ask you guys if you wanted me to design that, or get somebody to design that for us, because we're looking for cool new ideas. You know, we're trying to stand out a little bit more with our merch, because I think we can make some cool stuff here. All right. Romelli says, opinion on Anderson so far this year. Personally, not a huge fan. He seems lost without Galley. Yeah. As soon as I saw that they lost, all of the veteran guys in the summer, that none of them were coming back, I expected that possibly Armia would come back for like a year. But as soon as I saw how many they lost and how much that would shuffle the 2 lines that were functional last year, I thought that there'd be a bit of a step back for Josh Anderson. Now, I don't think that he looks lost per se. I think that line is a group that doesn't work well together, and unfortunately, there's not really like any motivation to break up the other lines in order to fix that line at the current stage. So for one of those 3 players, if they can't figure out a way to make it work, somebody's eventually going to get scratched, and somebody else will get a try, and that's just the reality of it. I don't think he looks lost. I think the line just doesn't function very well. I think they're players who play very differently, and in an ideal world, Evans and Anderson can work decently together, but it has to come with a third player who is the the wrench, or not the wrench, but he's the gear that makes everything work, right? He's like the last piece that goes in and creates the situation for those 2 to work together. And Patrick Laine is not that guy at all. It's not his fault. He's just not that guy. So that line just doesn't function. And yeah, Anderson, I think on the PK has been fine. I think his individual play has been what I expect, but he doesn't have the guys with him who have chemistry with him anymore. So yeah, it's tough for him. Bernardo Saunier says, thoughts on Dobson so far? I think he's awesome. Awesome. I thought it was going to take him more time to adjust to playing in the Canadian system, because the Islanders play such a conservative game, And he was relied upon for offense in that very conservative scheme. So like a lot of point shots. And he takes the odd shot, but he's adjusted pretty well. Like I find a lot of his involvement in plays, like his puck touches, are very subtle. They're very efficient. He makes mistakes like anybody else does, but he recovers very well from them. He's rarely out of position. He's much more physical than I expected him to be. And he's found himself in like the Canadian system and functioning well within it really quickly. And I think Ramelli says, I think he's quite the game changer. I completely agree. I think that trickle down on economics is not real, but the trickle down of adding a player of Dobson's talent is gigantic. You see it every game with Mike Matheson. You see it in the extra space for Lane Hutson. You see it in the fact that the Canadiens have Alexandre Carrier on the third pairing. This is a guy who some people would argue was their best defenseman in the playoffs. I would argue it was Lane Hutson, but I've seen people argue with good reason that Alexandre Carrier was the most important defenseman to them in the playoffs last year. And he was exceptional. Like he really was. And there's a reason why the Capitals took him out. He's on the third pairing. It's nuts. It's nuts the amount of depth they have overnight because of that move. And that's why when I wrote my piece on, I think it was on Doc, I was talking about the Boston Bruins. Because Jeff Gorton also built the Boston Bruins. He made a lot of that stuff happen in a very, very short amount of time. And then Pete Chiarelli came in and took all the credit for it because he was associated with Zdeno Chara. But I said that the Noah Dobson move is their Zdeno Chara swing. It's the big move that may not pay off immediately. I believe Chara was there for like 6 or 7 years almost before they won. But obviously, things are on a much faster pace in Montreal here, but I think he is their big swing that is there to make everything else function better. He is such an impactful player at both ends of the ice and in transition. It's really crazy. Like the Canadiens have legitimately 2 number 1 defensemen and a third defenseman who can play number 1 defenseman minutes, which is crazy. Plus Caden Gooley, who I think is a first pairing defenseman and if he meets his full potential. And Alexandre Carrier, who is probably like a very, very good number 3 in the NHL. Like the depth on defense is crazy. It is really crazy. Yeah, Piano Matt says going from Savard to Dobson was such an upgrade. Yeah, and it's no insult to Savard. It's just that Dobson is incredible. He is incredible. Not enough was made of that move or Zach Bolduc this summer. Like there have been people talking like in national media about like, yeah, they're a team on the rise because that's like the obvious stuff. But coming into this season with the amount of upgrades that the Canadiens have made, like I've said it that this is a boom or bust season, but the boom is really high. Like if this club is as good as they look, if they are as good as they are on paper, if Kirby Dach actually does go from a maybe to a definitely, this is a team that can do damage. I know I'm saying that 4 games in, and it seems crazy, but I'm talking about the overall build over the Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton era. Yeah, Ramelli on Dobson says, you don't see him that much. He's not spectacular like Hutson, but he does everything well and effortlessly. That's exactly it. I think some folks in preseason were kind of disappointed because they expected like, oh, now we have 2 Hutsons because he was a big point producer on Long Island, but he doesn't play anywhere close to the same kind of game. He's much more like, not quite like Markov per se, but the same kind of like, survey the game and make the right move at the right time kind of guy. And those guys have a lot of value. Trinka says, Prianta Emrith on Blue Sky, Cole Caufield tied Aurel Joliat for third in Habs history with his 9th overtime goal. Caufield trades only Howie, Max Pacioretty, both with 10 OT winners. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I guess the 3-on-3 era is a little bit different, but goal's a goal. And Cole is lethal in overtime. Like, he's just a clutch guy. Him and Suzuki. Like, this is what I'm talking about with this team all the time. Like, why I'm so high on them. It's not the individual players. It's all of them. Like, that's the crazy thing about this team. It's not like they're building around one superstar, and they may have multiple superstars on this team. They're building a full roster with like better backup behind it than you would expect. Like, the depth. This is what's going to be very difficult to compete with once the Canadiens are fully developed. Rod Langway fan club, welcome bud, says Dobson and Matheson are the like two knights on a chessboard. They cover a lot of ground, are hard to predict. Damn, that is good. Damn, that is good. I wish I thought of that. You're 100% right. They must be really difficult to counter. They must be extremely difficult to counter. Now, that's the kind of hard to play against that I like to talk about. I know that like both NHLers and NHL broadcast media talk about hard to play against as like physically difficult, like punishing to play against, but that's the kind of hard to play against that wears you out. King of the North, Lane is deadly in OT. Yeah, you give that kid space. It's when Lane Hutson has the puck and it's like 3-on-3 or like a 4-on-3, I just start like giggling. I don't know about you guys, but I just like a kid. It's almost embarrassing actually, but he's just pure fun to watch. He should make like you remember when Alex Kovalev made a skills DVD? Lane Hutson, please do that. I would watch that. Jean-Francois Paré says for older basketball fans, Lane is Magic and Dobson is Bird. Ooh. I like it. Sammy Haig, Caufield and Suzuki have that clutch gene. Yes, they do. They really do. Like, that ice in your veins you need to make that killer move. And they both want it too. That's the thing. Like, I think that's the thing that I like about Suzuki the most, even though at times it can probably frustrate, is he's an incredible playmaker. He plays with one of the better one-touch scorers in the entire NHL. But there are a lot of times where Nick Suzuki wants to take that damn shot, and he does. And it's because he has a really good shot too. And he's right to take those shots. You know, he's got it too. I love that they both want to be the guy, but they're not selfish about it either. Like, Caufield will set up Suzuki too. You know, like that overtime goal in the playoffs against the Leafs. Let's bring that up. Kay says, I found myself giggling out loud at Demi's goal today. Yeah, he's got that quality to him as well. Like, the amount of confidence he has to just skate right through traffic to the net at his age. Imagine what he's going to look like at 24. Because he's already pretty stocky. He's going to get man strength. Like, get hype about the Montreal Canadiens, folks. Tell your friends. This team is going to be so much fun to watch. And I honestly believe, I really do, that we here at Game Over can be like a vector for creating a fan base or like harnessing a fan base of the Montreal Canadiens that just doesn't get catered to enough. And that's like people who the NHL shits on all the time, you know, queer folks, you know, people of color, our trans friends, you know, people who aren't barstool losers. You know, I think we can do something here and grow with this team and like build something special. Like, they're so enjoyable. They've got such a high ceiling. King of the North says, did I miss you guys talk about the skate out songs? No, we didn't even touch on it. Oh, and Bernardo says, sorry, I missed it. Did we talk about SDPN being embarrassing? Okay, we'll do skate out songs quickly. We talked about the opening ceremony, which we said, like, yeah, it was perfect. But, yeah, the skate out songs were great. I loved Bolduc having a Quebecois song. That was so awesome. And, like, I just, watching his face light up, it's weird. As you get older, the younger guys, you're like, oh, it's like my little brother or something, or like my large adult son. And just the pride that he had, to put on that jersey as like, just that's cool. That's cool. I love that so much. And I love that Cole Caufield came out to Money for Nothing. He's like, I'm going to get like 3 seconds of song time. I'm going to pick the longest guitar solo intro in history. But that song rocks. And you know what I really want to talk about with Suzuki? Because he didn't have to choose Fix You, but the captain knows what he's doing, and it just got the building going. Not to mention Lane Hutson's ovation, too. That was crazy. Stephen Law, what was my favorite skate out song? Yeah. And Suzuki totally got the excitement. Suzuki with Fix You, that was just cherry on top. Cole Caufield won the best song. Yes, I agree. But I think that's also an age-based thing. I think we're showing our age a little bit there. And Bernardo, you wanted to talk about... I didn't see what was said on SDP. Like, full disclosure, I haven't watched anything from them since we left. Not like a boycott or anything. It's just like it would hurt in a way, like my heart, because they're my friends and it sucked. So I haven't been able to. So that's where I am. But I heard that they were a little bit upset and that they were saying that it was going to be the next Marner situation and stuff. But yeah, gladly on a like Habs versus Leafs basis, take that Schadenfreude and eat it all up. I love it. But yeah, I don't know what they said. So if you have what they were upset about or what they said, lay it in the comments. Jacques, I went with the Monday Night Raw theme, right? I think Stone Cold's theme would have been cool. I agree, Outrage. MFM says the thing with Bolduc's song is that I hate Serpentetique with my whole being, and I have for like 25 years. Okay, more like 15. Yeah, fair. I don't know the lore, so Sammy Higgs says, yeah, Rod Langway shot is missing the constant motor, elusiveness, and fakes. The mix of on the entrance songs was off. A few songs were hard to hear. Yeah, I mean, arena noise is always kind of tough for broadcasts. There's a lot of stuff going on. Sometimes things don't get picked up very well. Brown, don't even know what Lane chose. Yeah, I don't remember. I know Gallagher chose Metallica. Enter Sandman. Yeah, they were upset that those types of contracts were never signed by the Leafs, and they're getting scared. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing, though, right? Is the Leafs never built that culture. The Leafs got a few superstar players and like dusted their hands off, and were like, "We're done. We're gonna be a dynasty now. We're gonna compete right away." But they didn't have like the underlying depth to build a contending team. So they've been constantly pursuing Band-Aids. And yeah, now we're here. Adam and Steve thought that both sides were upset and Papa Hudson was too involved. Must mean a bad outcome. Yeah, and that the information that I got was that there was no issue with Hudson's dad being involved. None whatsoever. Hudson's dad is protective because he has a small son in a sport that values size over everything. And in today's day and age, Lane grew up on social media, right? So like, I think there's a lot of crazed hockey parents. And I think Lane Hutson's dad has said some things in the media that have rubbed people the wrong way and has like interacted with people on social media. But I don't think people who have not had a child be popular on social media in the social media age now understand like how that must feel, because it must be very tough. And yeah, he's defensive of Lane for sure, but from what I heard, he has not been an issue with the Canadiens or with Hutson's career. And I personally think it was great that he said that he would maybe go and play for Canada instead of the States, because fuck the USA. Denny Gallagher with another assist. Career assist year for Brendan Gallagher at his age. That'd be fantastic, right? Oh, yeah, Gally trying the toe drag. He is feeling it. I love that, though. He looks like a younger man. Yeah, Trinket says, listen, not all parents can be the Suzukis. And you know what? Even the Suzukis have said, like, dealing with seeing what people will say about your kids, and that's somebody who's as well loved as Suzuki, is, like, really hard. Really hard. Like, I'm very glad that my parents aren't on social media enough to know what people say about me sometimes, because I'm sure it would be tough for them. All right, folks, it's been great chatting with you tonight about the Montreal Canadiens, having a nice night with you, and another win for your Montreal Canadiens. But I got to go because I'm tired. I will see you on the next one, I think, unless it's K and I'm getting a break. But other than that, it's great to talk to you. Smash like on the stream, subscribe to Game Over Montreal, hit up our Patreon, hit up our Discord, private message me there if you want, and head to Inchu Bijou this weekend for their spectacular Marche Maleficarum, and say Game Over sent you.